Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to take a look at painting a lightning from the new Aeronautica Imperialis Skies of Fire. So as you can see, the model is already been primed using Res white, and we have it just simply sitting on the flying stem. It's got green painter's tape on it because I was airbrushing the prime on. Silicum Gray is going to be our color here, and I'm using a large base coating brush to apply it. I've thinned it down just with the dampness of the brush, and as you can see, we're simply just moving the paint along the surface in a somewhat controlled kind of fashion as we are basically bringing our brush strokes forward to the back. And because the paint has thinned out ever so slightly, we will have to apply more than one coat as we work our way around the model. Also being careful not to hit too much areas. I'm not really that concerned, but just the nose, the tips of the wings, and the little panels on the back of the tail wings as well. Mechanica Standard Gray is next. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, and I'm going to use a smaller base coating brush to apply this. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to lay some chevron kind of razzle dazzle type patterning on the plane. Now, as you may or may not guess, this patterning here is basically inspired by a World War II fighter plane of a similar look, as you will notice as we work our way through here. And basically just the dampness of the brush thinned out, and when I'm laying these kind of lines down, I'm imagining basically picking a corner of a particular detail and then just trying to draw a straight line. Now I'm using this brush here to draw my lines, but you can simply use a smaller brush if you're more comfortable with that. With this brush here, I just simply pick a point and draw a straight line, and then very carefully try and work the brush back and forth into the details. The paint is slightly thinned, so I will have to apply more than one coat, but that is not a huge issue. And basically I just go for 3 basic shapes on the surface. It's kind of that rule of 3 when working on small models like this. Silicum Gray is next, the Citadel contrast. I'm going to use a fairly generous amount of thinning medium to thin this color out, more like probably a 2-to-1, but in retrospect I probably think a 3 or even 4-to-1 would have been better. As of recording this, I also used an airbrush to finish off the squadron, and I found I preferred the results of thinning this down to about a 3 or even 4-to-1 of medium to contrast, just because I was not 100% behind all the color shifting that was going on as far as how much the contrast was changing the value of the main areas, and I really only wanted it to reside within details and give me just a bit of color variance on the model. You can see here I'm just using a damp brush just to feather the contrast back a bit, and in doing so it also gives us a bit of that the hint of the streaking and the grime on the plane as well. So again, that kind of helps. Longbeard Gray is next. This is the Citadel Dry, and I'm going to use a large dry brush to apply this onto the model. This is going to be applied over a very large portion of the model. You can see I was just illustrating there that how much paint I had on my brush, and then you could see as I brought the brush in, there was very little left on the bristles themselves. So again, when you're dry brushing, you do not want a lot of paint onto the bristles themselves. And as I work the brush back and forth on the model, begin off kind of going left to right and then up and down and then semicircular as well, just to kind of get those panel lines and the little details here and there. You want to make sure that you do not have a lot of paint on your bristles, as you will end up with big streaks and such. Unless, of course, that's what you want to do, then, of course, don't let me stop you. But as you can see, after it's done, just that simple little layer, we're going to come in with some Uriel Yellow next, and this will be for the nose, the wing tips, and the panel in the tail wing as well. I think by now you can kind of imagine what my inspiration is for the color scheme for this plane. So the whole squadron will be done up in this fashion, and basically with this base coating brush. I'm just trying to be very careful as I apply this. I could have also went with Everland Sunset on top of this just to build the yellow up, but I didn't want to lay too many layers down because, again, with such a small scale model like this, you really don't want to be laying too much layers of paint down. So, that is a bit of a caution there, which is why, you might want to use contrast and such to achieve these. Iandin yellow is next, and I'm thinning it down with a very generous helping of water, as you can see there as I demonstrated. And then I did apply 2 coats of Imperial yellow on here to get a nice smooth even coverage. Thinned out the contrast here with the Iandin and applied more like a shade wash, letting it change the shadows and such, but not so much that it overly tints the yellow. On the tail fins, I allow a little bit extra to kind of, creep into around the little details and such. Again, just, to really kind of accentuate those details. Next, with this dry color, is basically just to, again, finish off these. I'm using a small dry brush, and this is to just catch those high points. And I'm also concentrating a little bit more towards the nose of the plane. When I do the wingtips here, I concentrate more on the forward leading edge of that tip, again, so that you build up a little bit of color gradient here. I give the entire detail a once over, as it were, but I concentrate more of my brush strokes towards the forward edge on the on those wing fins down the back, and just really concentrating just to pick up the edge on the outer portion. On the nose there, you can see I catch this the underside as well. Next, we're going to come in with some black Templar. This is the contrast, and we're just going to quickly fill in the windows here with our small detail brush as we basically just work this color in. And if you can help it, you draw the majority of the paint really kind of towards, the upper portion of each of the little parts of the windows, as it were, so it kind of gets darker towards the high point. We will look at these in greater detail in a future video, so if we wanted to create a bit more of, a shinier effect on those, we will take a look at those. Quickly here on the multi-lasers, I just simply apply this, and of course on the nozzles as well, the engine nozzles, I apply the black Templar. Now you can pretty much leave these as is. I also do the intake on the forward edge very carefully, not to hit any of the areas of the yellow, because again, coming back over with a darker, brighter color with that yellow on top of that dark color would just be a big pain. Lead belchers next. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, and with our detail brush we are going to draw it through the paint, turning it 180 degrees, and draw it through the paint again to give us a nice little chiseled edge on the brush. And this is so that we can do kind of an overbrushing method onto the areas here. We're using the contrast basically to, we can leave it as such, giving us our little highs and lows, but we can also come over this with an overbrushing of metal so that we have basically the shadow. We could have also painted this metal and then used the black Templar in a similar fashion, like shade wash, or even use null oil, what have you, but I found that this was just a little bit easier, and again, not laying too many layers of paint down on the miniature, which, again, you can see there when we're using the chiseling method, we can simply just, catch those high points and leave the darker tones underneath. And for the intake here, I didn't bother trying to catch those little blades inside the interior, as, I just didn't really want to hit it with any excess amount of paint or anything like that. Flesh Terrors Red is next, and this is going to be straight out of the bottle. I'm using our detail brush here, and I'm just catching the tips of the missiles, and that'll pretty much be it. I'm just very carefully coming at it from every angle so that I have complete coverage over the nose cone of the missiles. We could have also went with, the Blood Angels color, or I can't remember what the brighter red is called, but we could have also hit it with that, gone for a much brighter tone, but I really didn't want to go too bright and get too cartoony, even though that yellow is quite bright and striking. But that is it. Next, we can seal the model, continue on, or we can come back and do some transfers as well. Maybe we'll save those for future videos as we continue working our way around this little squadron. And of course, these are getting done just to a tabletop standard. But that is it. That is the lightning from the skies of fire, Aeronautica Imperialis. Big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and it'll take you off to a magical website called Patreon, where you can support at varying tiers. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.